While it may seem like everybody you know has mastered the secret art of financial security or choosing the right wine, we've all experienced that moment of shock when we've made it so far without knowing an essential skill. From recent graduates eager to grow their networks to well-seasoned professionals looking to invest, travel, or de-stress, each stage of life comes with its own challenges. Enter theSkimm. Co-founded by CEOs Carly Zakin and Danielle Weisberg in 2012, theSkimm has fundamentally changed the way millennial women consume news and information. Now they are here to give readers the knowledge and tools they need to skim their own lives. How to Skimm Your Life is the ultimate reference tool that makes it easier to live smarter, coming with everything from the major moments to day-to-day. This book addresses everything from personal finance, career, stress management, and so much more. So please welcome Carly Zakin and Danielle Weisberg.
I'm going to try not to spill my coffee, too. Hi, guys. Good morning. Thanks for having us today. We're so excited to be here. We love Google because you have the best food.
Mm-hmm. Priorities.
Yes.
So thank you both so much for being here. Your book is out now. It came out yesterday.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
It came out today. Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We had our first book tour event here in New York last night, and then the book dropped this morning. We're so excited.
Kick off the rest of our tour. We leave here and go right to the airport.
That's so exciting. I love it. You're busy, busy women. So let's back up a little bit. So you started theSkimm in 2012. Can you tell us what theSkimm is for anyone who may not know?
Sure. theSkimm is a membership to Living Smarter. So Carly and I started it in 2012. We were 25 years old. We had about $4,000 saved up and our laptops that didn't really work. And we were producers. We grew up loving news. We loved journalism. We loved storytelling. And we knew how to ask people questions. And we graduated. We found ourselves in great jobs. We had moved up pretty quickly, looked around, and realized for the first time that it's weird to get paid to read the news every single day. And that our friends who are smart and educated and on the go had other things that they had going on in their lives. And we took a step back and thought about millennial women and this demographic that is amazing and leading in so many different ways, and making household spending and purchasing decisions. And there wasn't a news source geared towards how they like to live. And that didn't make any sense to us. So we did, on a bigger scale, what we had always done, which is break down what was going on that day and tell our friends, which has now turned into millions of women throughout the day. And obviously, over the past 7 years, we focused on news, but we really started to have conversations and with these amazing women in our community. We have over 40,000 Skimm ambassadors and our Skimm squad who helped us launch the book. And we would hear about what else was going on in their lives and the questions. And we found the common thread that no one has their shit together, that everyone has questions, that everyone doesn't really know what it's like to be an adult, and you want to have experts to ask. And there isn't an expert because everyone's figuring it out. So that's really where we're going with this book. And theSkimm as a company is working towards making it easier to live smarter across all categories of your life.
That's amazing. I don't have my shit together. I promise.
We don't either.
It's great, but that's what I love so much about theSkimm is that that's the secret. Like, everybody is still figuring it out. And when we work together and we come together as a community, we make it so much easier on everyone. Share the knowledge. Like, it's not a competition. It's a marathon that we're all running together. And I love that. What gaps were you seeing in the media landscape when you first started this? What made you say, I don't like reading the news, or well, you guys like reading the news, but what were you seeing that your friends weren't really into?
Well, so we definitely loved reading the news. And I think indexed probably very much out of our kind of age demo. We both watched the evening news at 6:30. We both were watching the Today Show and the morning shows all morning. So I think we were like skewing their demos. But our friends, I mean, I think there was a few things. One is, when we looked at our friends' routines, they weren't home at 6:30. They weren't home in the morning with the TV on. And if the TV happened to be on, the volume wasn't on. And we were seeing, where we worked, but not just at that company, but at all traditional media outlets, that they were kept talking about at the time the word millennial. And it's kind of funny to think about that now. 7 years ago, that word was not overused the way it is today. We didn't even know we were millennials at the time. And I remember we Googled women in their 20s and 30s, and we were like, that's what we are. And we saw that these companies were talking about how do we reach the younger audiences and having these town halls and all these internal conversations, but not actually hiring the people or building the teams to create content and experiences that fit into this audience's routines. And then when we looked at the new media landscape at the time, this isn't kind of the heyday of Twitter, I would say, a heyday of cable news, different heyday than we're in now. And there was just so much noise. And, you would leave Twitter open, you'd go away from your desk for an hour, you come back, there's 400 tweets to catch up on, and you're like, okay, I give up. And so for us, we knew we had to execute on bringing information into our own routines and our friends' routines.
That's great. Yeah. I'm never home. It's 6:30. Let's talk about the importance of empowering women. The articles in the Skimm are very much geared towards millennial women, as we said. How does the Skimm differ from other news outlets and media companies? Where are you guys different than our traditional news?
Well, one thing we're not different on is that we don't believe news is gender specific. So the stories that we pick aren't particularly for women versus men. We don't think that there's a need for different news. What we do look at is the day-to-day routines of women in this particular age demographic. And when we're creating products, that is how we think about what time are they waking up? What are the demands on their time? How are they living their day-to-day? And we're really obsessed with that. So when we create products, we think about average commuting times, and that influences our podcast and audio strategy. So in that way, our company is completely focused on millennial women as a demographic. And luckily enough for us, that's also a demographic that likes good things. And because of that, we have 20% male readership, and then we also skew older and to Gen Z. So it's been a sweet spot in the middle.
Yeah, Oprah loves you guys, I saw.
We'll take that.
Yeah. I'm not gonna argue with that. It's exciting.
That's hard. You guys now have 7 million subscribers to the Skimm, over 7 million subscribers. So congratulations on that. That is incredible after just a few short years. How have you seen the audience evolving and changing over the years? You're saying now you have 20% male readership and you're starting to skew more. Are you changing the way you are presenting things, or how has that evolved?
I think that, when you go back to your question before about what's our differentiation, we've known who we are and what our value proposition is for a very specific audience. And, we used to laugh early on. We've been very public about kind of the industry, I would say like the investor industry sort of not being interested in us in the early years. I will say GB has invested in the Skimm, so thanks. But in the early years, we were told women were a niche market. And I mean, it's laughable. So, haha. But obviously, that's not true. But we've always believed if you are everything to everyone, you are nothing to no one. And we have always had this very clear focus on the millennial woman. And that doesn't mean that we are for women necessarily at a specific age, but it means that we follow them through their life. And we're particularly interested in this generation for a few reasons. As Danielle said, like it's authentic to who we are, obviously. We all are seeing, the same stats that women are out earning their male counterparts in paychecks and degrees. For the first time, we are getting seats at the table. We are having the conversations that need to be had. We are the largest voting bloc. We are the future legislators. So it's this very inspiring moment for all of us. And then on the same time. Thank you. At the same time, there is a dismal picture, which is we have more student debt than any generation before. We're making less than our parents did at this age. We're getting married and having children later, if at all, which then leads to rising costs of fertility. Our dependents are going to be our parents who are getting pushed out of work earlier. And we won't have Social Security. That's really fucking depressing.
It's fine.
And scary.
It's
totally fine. Everyone's good.
Yeah,
We're gonna be
so
fine.
we all do that.
So we all do that. And then that's why our first chapter is about wine. But I think we say that because this generation is so fascinating. And it's this incredibly optimistic moment for this generation. And then so many burdens that we don't even realize what we're up against. And I think oftentimes the millennial generation, gets accused of being, impatient or entitled. And it really comes from a feeling a lack of security. And what this book is, and why we thought it was so important to us, was what is the reference guide that we all need to know how to be an adult, ask all the questions we all have. And our goal in this is that we all have enough information to then make choices. Because of all the things I just said, there's a lot of really important choices we have to make.
Yeah. That's it's a little scary, but it's okay.
We're gonna be okay.
We're gonna be fine. So let's talk about the book specifically now. I like to describe this as a picture book for adulting.
Oh, I like that.
But like in the most empowering and also charming way. Like
you
can come on the road with us.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll just hang out. No, it is. I was reading it all last week, and it was just so wonderful. I couldn't put it down, and it was such a great way of breaking down these concepts of stocks versus bonds versus every type of wine versus how to fold a fitted sheet. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
That was honestly the hardest part.
That
of the
takes
whole
a lot
book
of
was writing
research.
about that.
But where did this idea to write an actual book come from? At what point did you say, we have this great newsletter, we have this great community, let's make a reference guide?
So it was inspired by two things. One was our amazing community of women that we've gotten to know that have been our biggest champions and our first critics. And they were really pushing us to chime in on different aspects of their lives. And we have a Facebook group with, thousands of women, and we talk to them all day long, and we would see the questions that they had. And it was really the chapters that we talk about are taken from those everyday questions. And we would take a step back with our team, and like none of us really knew the answers to these things, and we're all smart. So it seemed like there wasn't a good source of information that was putting this all together in the right place. The second thing that pushed us towards this book is that there's a lot of stuff that we've learned over the past 7 years in running our business that we had to learn again and again and again. Like that time I charged spring break on my credit card and I didn't understand interest rates. And it's, you have to pass it on, and you have to be open about things that you didn't know. And one of the biggest things we wanted to put in this book is how to ask the right questions and how to overcome that feeling when you walk into a room with some sort of expert. And it could be a sommelier, it could be a financial advisor, it could be an expert on foreign economic policy, whatever it is. Having this baseline information to be able to feel like you can confidently start a conversation. And that doesn't just touch news, it touches all aspects of lives. Our wish is that people open this book and find one thing that they've been putting off or one area of their life that they haven't felt confident in, read it and start a conversation and just try something different. And that's really exciting for us. I think as a startup, there's never the right time to do anything different. Every time we branch out into something, it's scary. We're kind of entrepreneurs who are very risk adverse in a way, which I don't think people necessarily realize about us. And so for the first 3 years, it was like, just keep your heads down and focus on the newsletter. And then it was, okay, we're going to focus on creating our app, Skim Ahead, and creating subscription revenue. And then it was, we're seeing audio becoming big. And so let's launch a few podcasts. And then it was this idea that a year ago was a line, Skimm book, ? With a year attached to it, on like a list of things that we wanted to do. And at some point we'd taken away all of the reasons that we could say no to it. We had the right team to bring it to life. We had the right support from an amazing publisher and publicity teams. And I think as a startup, you have to have focus and you have to have laser focus. And then you get really good at saying no, and saying no becomes the default. That for us, this book is kind of a reminder of saying yes to things.
That's great. That's I like that 1 year time. I was going to ask you, how long did it take you to write? Because everything in here is very
Well,
recent.
it's actually, so we didn't start writing it when we said we would last year. So we were told that the book process from when you sign a contract to like launch day takes 2 years. We did it in 10 months. So our team worked very hard on this.
I love it. That is
Uh,
some motivation right
and
there.
honestly, I think it went fast because this has been something we've been sitting on for a while. It really just poured out of us and our team.
That's great. So the book covers a ton of topics, everything from how to negotiate, investing one-on-ones, geopolitics, pairing the right wine with the right foods. How do you decide which topics to put in?
I think, well, as Danielle said, one, we were looking at what our community was actually talking about. What were they asking each other about? I mean, I would say the biggest themes that really came up and surfaced was around the section we call Skimm BA, career, how to ask for a raise, how to negotiate. Then Skimm money, which is
Mhm.
how do I get out of debt with my student loans? How do I decide when I can buy a house? How do I negotiate a mortgage? If I get a financial advisor, what do you even say to them to check up on how you're doing so that you actually sound like you know what you're talking about and then do know what you're talking about? And so a lot of that came from our own personal experiences as well. I mean, I think one section that was very personal for me was around health insurance. And I remember in my pre-Skimm life, I didn't go to the all hands in my company around choosing the plan because they kept talking about like this year the deductible will be X, and I didn't know what the word deductible meant, and I felt really stupid, and I didn't want to feel stupid in front of my coworkers, so I just said I had a meeting and I didn't go. And now as an employer, when I see when people onboard and then they get their forms, and you see when people ask, I'm going to take this home. And I'm like, I see that look in your eye because I've had it too, where you're like, do I fill out the 1 or the 0 on my W-2? How do you choose the healthcare plan? So we wrote about all of that because we've experienced it ourselves, and it's not because we're not smart. It's not because our audience isn't smart. It's because a lot of these industries literally make money on making their industries complicated. And so if we can combat that, that's a win. We think for our audience.
Yeah, knowledge is power.
And then also, I mean, when we look at like what is the day-to-day of this audience's life, we all travel. We have great travel tips in there.
Mm-hmm.
We like wine. Our audience likes wine. We're one of the top ways to sell wine actually for this audience on Friday mornings. Our audience likes to drink. And so we talked about, how do you actually, when you go to a restaurant, how do you know how to read a wine list if this is not your area of expertise? So we go through a kind of a whole guide around that as well.
That's great. So I feel like you two will have a great answer for this because you seem to know what's going on. So there's a ton of different do's and don'ts, and there's so much information packed into this book, and a lot of it is a great start for then you to go off and learn more. But how do you not feel overwhelmed by everything? How do you go about remembering, well, I have to do this, but I don't know how to do this? How do you negate that every day, or how do you navigate that?
I think one day at a time and one thing at a time. This isn't supposed to be like, none of us have to, and we actually say it in the first chapter, which is like, having it all isn't a thing. No one has it all, and no one has it all at the same time. It might seem like that, but we're all struggling with juggling things all day long. So just turn to it, try one thing out, read one section, and then come back to it. And the great thing about having a reference guide is that it's there. And the things that we put in are evergreen. It's not going to go out of style. It's something that you can revisit at all points of your life. So if you just graduated college and you're looking into renting your first apartment, to you've saved up enough that you're thinking about buying an apartment or house, all of that is covered. And so you're going to turn to it at different times for different parts of information.
Great. We're going to start the Q&A in just a moment. So you guys, if you have any questions, you can start lining up at the microphones in the aisles. But right before we start that, I want to talk about your podcasts.
Oh, thank you.
You guys have not one but 2 podcasts. I'm a podcast nerd. I love that. So you have Skimmed from the Couch, which is where you two have conversations with influential women in the industry, either in business or politics or
it's not a specific industry, which is one of the things that we love about it. It's not just female CEOs. It is all women, and all women who have leadership positions and you name it. So we've interviewed celebrities, we've interviewed politicians, we've interviewed the head of the Girl Scouts, we've interviewed so many amazing women. Sarah Blakely, who's actually hosting our book stop tour in Atlanta, and just amazing women we admire. So we love it.
Yeah, so that one is really great. And then you also have Skim This, which is a breakdown of the news each day that hits your podcast feed at, I believe, 5 o'clock. That has become my go-to every day. That's my train ride home.
Thank you.
So where did you guys decide to start doing podcasts? Where did that come into play?
So I think it goes back to really our product strategy from the beginning, which is how do we decide to do the Skimm? How do we decide to do an email? Which is, what are our routines? Like, we all check email first thing in the morning, for better or worse. Then we commute home. Like, we all end up leaving the office, and hopefully you're not texting and driving, or texting and walking and reading while you're walking. I know a lot of us do that, but we all want to listen to something. And so we really paid attention to how our own habits are changing, how our friends' habits were changing, and our audience's habits were changing. We wanted to create audio content that was timed to your commute. So we actually started doing that in our subscription app about 2 years ago, where we created premium audio content. And then we moved into podcasts, which are free, in these different areas. So one around career, one around news. And the news one, Skimm This, is specifically made to be about 10 or 11 minutes long every day. And it's not just like, here's all the news that happened today, but it's, here's the most complicated thing that happened that everyone's talking about, and we'll explain to you why it's complicated.
That's amazing. So we have a question here in the audience.
Hi there. Thanks so much. I have been reading the Skimm probably for 6 years, since back when I was living in DC. So it's traveled with me. I'm now in business school. I'm an MBA intern here. And I was just curious, what advice do you have for female entrepreneurs?
Network. I think that is the advice I would give any entrepreneur. That, and take a vacation before you start, and like, seriously, do that one. We didn't. But I think that building your own network it's like I think that it is one of the most important things that you could do. You are going to have to represent whatever you start. You are going to have to be more passionate about it than anyone you could pay to do that for you. And so coming up with your own circle of people who know you, who are your 911 call, that has made all the difference in our business.
Thank you.
Thanks for reading.
Okay.
Hi. Thank you so much. Similar Skimm reader. It's awesome. But
Thank you.
recently, I feel like I've had more of an issue just reading the news all the time as well. No matter where you stand on the issues, sometimes it just feels like it's a pretty dark world out there. And it's almost hard to keep up with everything. Being so kind of tied into all of that, how do you cope, and how would you suggest, do you have any suggestions for how we can kind of remember that the world is still a good place sometimes?
Yes. One word, vote. So, and I say that with the kind of explanation that we are a nonpartisan organization. And so when we talk about what differentiates us, especially in today's media landscape, our audience is very divided politically. They are very geographically and politically diverse. And that's something we're very, very proud of. And it's enabled us to create this platform that we call No Excuses, which contributed to us getting, in 2018, over 200,000 people to vote. And when we think about that, and we think about how do you take, no matter what side you're on, like, the news is crazy right now and it's exhausting. And when we started the Skimm 7 years ago, we felt there was a lot of noise. There's so much more noise today. And so our kind of company mission was really to, how do we clear the weeds? How do we clear away the noise and make sense of the world? We do that more than ever today. And I think we feel very privileged to be able to do that every day. And I think what drives us, and what I would say to you and to anyone else who's sort of feeling exhausted by just kind of the pace of the news that we're seeing, whatever side you're on, is that voting is the way that you can be active. And it is the way that you can feel like you are really doing something and making a difference. And so we are already underway for our 2020 plans, and a lot of it will involve our users. So I hope you will get involved.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, we have a question over here.
Yeah, that was actually a great lead-in question to mine. My friend and I have also read it for 6 years since we were in college. She's thus gone to law school. We are kind of divided politically, but obviously still really good friends. We actually were wondering and kind of discussing Like, how do you consider that nonpartisan view when you're editing? Because sometimes a irrelevant slang, slang will creep in that sounds a little bit like you're leaning one way or the other, like girl boss or like slay or something that you put after a sentence with just a period kind of like leaves it up for, I think, us thinking that you're maybe going one way or another. So how do you think about that as you write internally and before you send it out each morning?
Well, first of all, thank you for skimming. We appreciate it. So 2 things that we think about. The first is that everyone on our team is a journalist, and you're trained in a hard news background, and we are all trained to look at the news objectively. The point of the Skimm is not to express a particular opinion. There are a lot of places out there. There's no shortage of it. And that's not the business market or need that we saw. The second thing is exactly what you said, which is some days people will be like, oh, I think they lean this way. And then the next day they're like, oh, my God, they're totally conservative. And we see that every single day because of the feedback that we get, which is literally like, I cannot stand you. You guys are so conservative. No wonder why like Fox invested in you. And then the next day it's like, oh my God, you guys are so liberal. No wonder why like the tech people like you. And that means we're doing our job. And so I think that having that back and forth means we're calling it out like we see it. And that's what we try to do.
Great. Thank you.
And we have time for one more question.
I've been reading for about 5 years, so
See, here's our demographic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm curious about the process and how you decide on the topics, right? You got only so much room, and you know, I feel like you do a good job at trying to describe each of those topics. But what's that process in trying to understand? Okay, this is going to be relevant today versus tomorrow.
It's funny, as I think about our suite of products, it's the easiest part of our day and our team's day. And people are always surprised when I say that, but every product that we've built has a different purpose. The Daily Skimm is meant to say, here's everything that happened yesterday. Here's what you need to know today. And we literally picture, okay, if I went to a work event or I sat next to someone at a wedding and they asked me about blah, 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 would I know about it and can I talk about it? It immediately, like going back to both our background and how we've curated our editorial team's background, we know what is a story, what will become a story, and what will feel old by tomorrow. Then when we think about our other products, our subscription app, Skimm Ahead, we think about what are the events that you would want to know across the month or the year, that if you had a genius executive assistant sitting next to you, they would tell you this is what you need to pay attention to. When we think about Skimm This, our daily news podcast, again, it's not, okay, here's a news readout of everything that happened today. It's what was the one story that is like very complicated. And it might not even be like the top story in the next day's daily Skimm, but it's a story that has a lot of layers. And how do we use our time to break that down? So really, I would say the kind of the connective tissue and all of that is we're thinking about how will you use this product and what is the conversation you would have with someone else after you use our product.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you.
So one last question from me. So you have the book, the podcast, you have your app, which you mentioned, and of course the newsletter. What are your hopes for the Skimm? What do you want to see it become? What do you want to do next? What's on the list?
Well, the next big thing on the list is getting all of you guys registered and voting for 2020. I think it is the biggest point of pride that we have as a company, and we want to go bigger this year. Our goal is to make sure that every woman in America gets out there and votes. And Google has been a helpful partner in the past, so we will put it on you guys. And hopefully you can join in on this mission. It is really our North Star as a company. The way that you show you are living smarter, cast a ballot. And as for the company, we are going much bigger, thinking through what are all of the categories that involve living smarter throughout your day.
That's great. Well, How to Skimm Your Life is now out wherever books are sold. You can find more at theskimm.com. Thank you so much to our guests, Carly, Zakin, and Danielle Weisberg.
Thank you, guys.